hope you guys are ready for a really strange episode. I've got Daryl with me on the show tonight. And Daryl has been on the show before, but tonight he's going to talk about some strange encounters he's had on a property called Alm Moon Labs in Oregon. He bought the property, they were out in the middle of nowhere, and they cast some prints, some Bigfoot prints that he caught around the property, and he put them in his brand new shop. And when he did that, he had no idea that all this strangeness would kick off, and a lot of weird stuff has happened. He's had multiple Class A encounters, government people showing up on his property. He has had some of the strangest things happen. He's got audio, video evidence, footprints, you name it. We're going to go over all this stuff tonight. This is a really good one, and you don't want to miss it. But before we jump into any of that, I just want to say thanks for hanging out with me tonight. If you've got an encounter you would like to send me, you can send it to me by email at mysteriesunknownpodcast@gmail.com. But let's jump right into the show. Daryl, welcome back to the show, man.
Thanks, man. Nice to see you again.
Well, man, it's my pleasure to have you back on. I know it's been a long time. I know there's a lot to get into, so let's just jump right into it. Why don't you take us back to the beginning when all this weird stuff started happening on your property and just kind of walk us through that.
Okay, yeah, it was a property that I had bought up in Oregon, out in Oregon. And the way I got there is I retired as a contractor. I was a contractor in California for 30-something years. Well, I was working also union. And I wanted to go up to Oregon to retire to go hunting and fishing. You know, you always heard the stories about all the hunting and fishing, which it was good. But I wasn't into Bigfoot at all. I didn't actually believe in Bigfoot. You know, I just thought it was kind of, like the Loch Ness Monster or whatever. But my brother did. My brother's from Oklahoma here, and he'd been into it almost his whole life. And anyways, I get out there, and he's telling me I'm out hunting, elk out in the middle of the Cascades. And he's like, hey, man, start looking for these weird signs, like these sticks sticking up this way or an X or just something strange. I've been out in the woods for hunting my whole life. So you notice strange things, when you see them out there. I started looking around. I started finding this stuff he was talking about. I'd take pictures and send to him. And he's like, oh, man, there's squatches in that area. I'm like, yeah, right. So I just kind of took it as a joke. One day I was hunting kind of down in this area where they have a lot of sightings in Oregon, and a deer ran across the road in front of me, and it was deer season. So I got out of my truck, I parked my truck, I got out with my gun, I walked down to the area, and the deer went off the road to the left down through a creek. So I'm walking down there, and I get to the creek, and there's a bend in the creek right there, and it's not running very much. So I just kind of walked across it. I had on my rubber boots anyway, looking for the deer. And where the creek made the bend, there was a sandbar, where it had been higher and it made sand, a buildup of a sandbar. And in that sandbar was the most perfect Bigfoot track you could ever see in your life. And I'm out in the middle of nowhere on this logging road where you can see nobody's been there in forever with the tracks. And here's this perfect track. And then I could see where it stepped out of the creek, made that track, and then all the other tracks in the kind of the grass area going up. But their strides are like 5 foot apart. It's big. So I caught about 4 more of the tracks, and it kind of scared me. I didn't believe it up to that point. And then here all of a sudden, here's this crazy 18-inch footprint, a perfect in the sand, and you can see, it's a bare foot. I mean, nobody's out there like that. So I didn't go on up in there. I turned around and went back to my truck, and by that time it had started raining pretty good. So I just kind of left out of there, and that kind of changed my belief right there into there's now at that point I believe there's some wild monkey man running around out here in the woods, because you can get 10 feet off the road out there, and it's so thick. If you didn't want to be seen, nobody'd see you. So I thought, wow. And then so it makes you a little bit more apprehensive when you're out in the woods, like, hey, there's some big giant creature out here now, bipedal creature running around. So anyways, after that I was just getting more, every time I'd hunt, I'd find more things. see more older footprints and tracks and stuff. And then I moved to the place called the Alm Moon Lab up by Cottage Grove, Oregon. I lived in that house, the Alm Moon thing. I moved into it, and it was wintry, kind of like December. So it was rainy, of course, in Oregon. And at night, I'd take my dog out about 10 before we went to bed. Have a little dog, a little toy Australian Shepherd named Izzy. So I would take her out at night, and then I would hear all these sounds. Our house was backed up to those woods where all that stuff was going on. So I would hear all these, yells and screams and all that. And I didn't know what to think about it at first. And then as I got a little more into it, my brother that lived in Oklahoma, he lives here still. He got an invite to this thing that Todd Neese puts on every year called Beachfoot. It's just it's an invite only thing where only certain people come. Like the most prominent Bigfoot people, like Bob Gimlin and Ron Moorhead, and all the people that are kind of really well known in the Bigfoot world. So my brother wasn't able to go, but I went. So so I went, and I was, just talking to, Bob Gimlin and everyone by the campfire, and Ron Moorhead was there, and I told him, hey, there's all this stuff going on. I'm hearing it at night. Strange things happen around my house. And Ron Moorhead's like, well, there's a guy that lives right by you that can kind of come out there and give you a heads up on all that stuff, because I was a newbie to all that. I didn't know anything about it. So his name's Toby Johnson, Tobe Johnson. He's got a podcast with the Flash of Beauty people. They do every Thursday night, and he's well known in the Bigfoot world also. So anyway, he comes out, and I just had that new shop built and stuff. So we kind of talked, and he had done that London Trackway, which was at the lake. London, the road there is London Road, and Cottage Grove Lake was there, and someone found a bunch of footprints that he cast with Cliff Brockman and all that. It's called the London Trackway if you look it up on YouTube. But so we were finding footprints, me and Toby and stuff, and he actually was living in a trailer. He had just gotten a divorce. He had a little travel trailer, and I had this property, and I was like, if you want to park it over there by the shop, come on down. I don't care. We had land. So he came out there, and he was a truck driver, so he drove truck at night mostly and stayed there. But I was up elk hunting once, and I saw these X's and all this weird stuff. So he comes in one day early, and I think it was the last day, like March 31st or whatever. It was like Good Friday before Easter. And I said, yeah, it's my last day of elk season on my tag. So you want to go up here behind in the woods, and I'll show you all those X's and all those weird weaved up trees. And he's like, sure. So this was about 3 in the afternoon. So we're up there driving, and we come around this turn, and it's kind of red clay there also. And it was a little bit wet from previous rain. And in the embankment, as we came around this little bend, were these two perfect uh, stamped half round, like someone took a basketball and just stamped it in that red clay, about half deep of the ball. And we're like, what in the world is that? So we we were looking at it, and I had my flashlight, and this was later in the day. By that time, about 4:30, it was getting a little, dusk time, and we could see there was hairs all in there. That's why I say these people that get like body impressions and all that, if that was true, you'd get the hair. That hair sticks in that clay. I mean, anybody, you jam your head in the mud, some of your hair is going to stay there. But anyways, we cast all that, and we still got the knee impressions. They're actually at a museum in Oak Ridge, Oregon. A gal opened a museum there recently called Area 58 because it's on Highway 58. So Priscilla is her name, and she opened a museum there. And those knee impressions are the casts are in her museum if anybody wants to stop by there. And anyway, they still have hair, unknown hair that we had tested at a lab. They're still sticking out. When we cast them and pulled it out, the hair came with it, a lot of it. We also, we did the gloves and the alcohol and with the envelope. And so everything was, all sterile. And I still have a few of the hairs. I think Toby probably got 10 of them. But anyways, that was that. We put those knee impressions in my shop, and then all this weird stuff started happening. Big pops, booms, bangs. Sound like somebody's in there with a ball peen hammer hitting on the inside of the shop. You go in there, not a mark, not a scrape. Nothing's out of place. We'd put the recorder in there, and it just sounded like a war zone in there. Anyways, in that house was a big 2-story farmhouse out in the country, backed up to thousands, hundred thousands of acres of government land, BLM land, they call it out there, Bureau of Land Management. And we would hear those sounds. So I just started. My brother brought one of those microphones that you can record with, and I started recording a parabolic. So I put it up on a stand. I started recording every night, and I got some crazy sounds up there. I mean, I got them talking just like, Ron Moorhead's Sierra sounds, the samurai gurgles. I would hear all that too, like late in the day, right before dark. I would hear it a lot and not be recording. But I recorded some of that. You've heard all the yells and screams. I got a lot more of those that aren't cleaned up. You can hear them up there yelling in a distance, like back and forth. And the house was actually kind of in between two mountain ranges in a valley. And sometimes they would be yelling on this mountain range, and the ones over across the valley would yell back. Just, their screams and yells and their noise they make. It's a crazy noise. Me and my wife were in the backyard one day doing a garden. We had the raised beds, and one of them lets out this crazy yell up in there, and it was so strong you can't explain it. It comes through the air and kind of vibrates your body. It's like, I don't know. Have you ever been in a zoo when a lion is going off and they got that brr, that kind of low, um, I can't even explain the sound they do, but it was like that times 100. And it just kind of shakes, rattles your whole body and the ground or whatever. And you're like, what in the heck? And it sounds like it's super close, but it's not that close. It might be a half a mile away up in the woods, but it kind of just reverberated everything around there. And my wife's like, go call Toby, tell him to come out here right now. So we were getting all kinds of stuff like that happening. And one night, it was a big 2-story house, and we slept on the top floor in the master, and right across the hall there was 2 other bedrooms. So in the summery months, it's a little warm, and I would just open the windows in those 2 bedrooms and leave the doors open our window. That way the air could flow, through there and keep us cool at night. So it was probably around midnight, 2 a.m. We had motion sensor lights on both sides of the house up high. So my wife got up to go to the bathroom, and she came back and she says, hey, the light's on out there by the shop. And there was a chain link fence around, the shop. There was a chain link fence around that area. So, I mean, I thought, yeah, it's probably just a cat or a possum or a raccoon or something. So I get up, and as I'm walking from the master bedroom across the hallway to the one of the other bedrooms so I could look down. It was like I was in a tree stand almost because I could look straight down. That light went off. It timed out. So whatever was down there, it was down there long enough to time that 3 to 5 minutes, whatever those lights stay on. Timed it out, but it was a pretty full moon, probably 3/4 at least. So I'm up there and I'm looking, and around the bottom of the house there was a sidewalk, and down below there was two other bedrooms. The house was a 5 bedroom. So I'm looking up against the house and I see this big large black thing. I'm like, what in the heck? What is that? I wouldn't think there'd be a bear, because that chain link fence, they wouldn't come over that. And I'm looking, and then as I'm there for a minute, I could see better. You know how when it's dark, you can start seeing better. And I see this black figure right there against that bottom bedroom window, looking right against the house. And so I just go like that, and this thing took off across the yard, kind of at a 45-degree angle, hit the chain link fence like ching, and it was just like, boom. But when it took off, it sounded like a horse. You know, when a horse will get up when they're dirty and they flutter, they go, that power they have, because it's such a, that's what it sounded like when that thing took off. And it was like, I was like, oh, I just went back. I was like, holy smokes, man. What in the heck has that kind of power and is that fast? I mean, it was just, so the next day, Toby Johnson was there, in the morning. It was a weekend, I think. And we go down there, and I told him what had happened. He's like, let's go check it out. So we go down there, and we're looking at the window, and the house was poured on a foundation. So it had about a 3 foot concrete stem wall around the house, foundation, because it was kind of on a slope. So that part of the front of the house was, the stem wall was taller, the concrete. And then as it got back, it got shorter. So it was probably 2.5, 3 feet of concrete. And then the house was built on that. And then the window to that bedroom was probably up another 2, 3 feet. And then, the top of the window was probably 8 feet. And then that kind of window had the screen on the bottom on the outside, and the top glass didn't have a screen on it. So we're looking, we get a stool, we're looking, and on that top window, Toby's like, oh my God, there was a face impression on that window, a huge head. And you could see, like, the forehead, because it's kind of greasy, like when your kids mess around with your sliding glass window on your patio and they got their handprints on it and smears. This was like a face print. And you could totally see it on there. And also, it was up against the window for a while, and it made like snot rockets against the glass. It was breathing. Like when you were a kid, you used to blow on the glass in the car and write your name or whatever. But its nose did that. It was sitting there leaning against that window for a while. And then on the bottom window was that screen, and it had 5 finger holes torn in the screen, and the hand was about a foot wide. I mean, it was huge. So when I scared the crap out of it, ripped the screen with all 5 fingers when it took off. I think that's what happened.
We'll get back to the show in just a second, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for liking and watching this video. Would you guys consider being a member? I got all kinds of cool things coming down the pipeline, lots of perks if you join and become members of this tribe. We're building a really cool community, so be a part of that, be a member. Let's just jump right back into the story. Thanks, guys.
That was the actual first Bigfoot that I saw at that house. And so one day I was coming back from an appointment that I had in another town. I was coming over a hill, and there was a big set of power lines that ran behind this house. So I'm coming over the hill. I'm a hunter, so the power lines are all open. So I'm inching up, looking to see if there's a herd of elk down there or something. Here's this Bigfoot. He catches me right as I'm coming. He takes off running. He was kind of caught out in the open so fast, and he's running so fast. It's like, if you've ever seen a deer when they kind of hop in between runs and they'll just kind of do that, That's how he was doing, but he was booking it at an angle, just and it almost looked like he was airborne between half of his steps. Went down in this little ravine and was gone within 5 6 seconds. That was wild. So that was the other one I saw right in that area. And then so there was I mean, I could go on for 3 days about all the stuff that happened inside the shop and all the weirdness in the house, the orbs. I mean, it's just a gambit of everything. It's kind of like Skinwalker Ranch there.
I've heard a lot of different Bigfoot encounters, and I've heard a lot, Daryl. I've heard a lot, doing this and all kinds of strange stuff. But your story is the strangest I've absolutely, hands down, ever heard. And like you said, I know there's a million directions you could go and a million things you could talk about. But how did those encounters, Daryl, have effect on your life, man? How did that change you after moving there, not believing in Bigfoot, and then start having all these encounters? How did that change you?
It kind of messes with your head a little bit psychologically because I was just a contractor, construction guy. But I was always the one in our family that if anything weird was going to happen around, it always happened when I was there. One of the things that kind of scared me at that house, well, one night, me and my wife, went to bed about 9:30, 10, and we had just gotten in bed maybe 5 minutes, and our room lit up brighter than daylight for maybe it only lasted 3 or 5 seconds. It seems like longer, but it just lit up so bright, illuminated the whole room that I can't even explain the light. And then it just went out, and it wasn't a light that blinded you. Like if you look at a light and then you can't see for a minute because of the brightness. It was the brightest light I ever seen in my life. It just lit up the whole room better than daylight or whatever. That was a very strange thing.
I say it all the time because I don't know what else you can say, but there's so much in God's universe we don't understand, and there's a lot of things with this Bigfoot stuff that just don't make sense. And what are you supposed to do with all that? And I know that there's so much that's happened, and I know that previously you talked about this, and if you're open to talk about it, if you're not, that's okay. But why don't you tell us about the time that you had some government agency vehicles start showing up on your property, man? I think that's one of the strangest things to me. And, I talk about it a lot. I think that they definitely know that these things are there and there's a connection there. But, man, why don't you share that with us if you're open to it?
Yeah, like I said, after we cast those knee impressions and we put them in that shop, I actually made a little holder for them and we'd set them in there. And the red clay was just drying up, and Toby would go in there, with the tweezers and get the hair, as it dried up. But anyway, on the thing that I made to put the knee cast in, we put some of that bubble wrap in the bottom and stuff, so they wouldn't damage them. And I had made a wooden thing with handles on it. But it they were setting the knee impressions were kind of sitting in the back of the shop where he was, working on them, getting the hair and stuff. And this shop was brand new. It had two big roll up doors. They were electric. They had a big electric motors on them, so you could park two big RVs in the shop if you wanted to. They were 15 foot high. They were tall. And I, like I said, I locked that shop every night. And those knee impressions were back there. So a day before this had happened, it was kind of muddy. It's always rainy in Oregon usually, other than a few months in the summer. But came out in the morning. One of the it was on the right side by the house. The big door, uh, garage door, was open. And I was like, we're the only one that's got the remote controls to that, and they're in our vehicles. Um, how could that have happened? In the floor, brand new shop, brand new concrete, no scuff marks. We didn't park vehicles in there, nothing. It was brand spanking new, really nice poured concrete. Here's these weird footsteps going over to those knee impressions. Weird, and they were some kind of, God, I can't even remember. Toby took pictures, and he knew the guy in Eugene, Oregon that started the REI stores or whatever. There's like a sporting good chain that's all over now. Well, he was friends with him because he was raised there. So he took a picture of this, and those shoes were from like some other country's military type shoe that they wear. It was weird. And they were like size 11 or 12. But they were going up to these knee impressions and they weren't coming back out. You could see the muddy footprints. No one stole anything out of the shop or anything. That door was open. I don't know how they do it. I guess government can do that. That was the first thing that happened that was weird with those footprints. And Toby knows the kind of shoes they are. He probably still has the photos, but it was like a military shoe from, I'm wanting to say, um, like over there where they're like Ukraine or one of those type things. The guy looked it up at the REI store of that pattern of shoe, and that's where they came from, somewhere over there. And anyways, that happened, so that was weird. And a couple days later, the everything's back to normal, I guess, whatever as it could be. I look out, and here's this white van parked right in front of the house. We're out in the middle of nowhere, out in the woods, out in the country, 10, almost 15 miles from town. Here's this white van. It's not a, we don't have, we don't have cable out there. We don't have any of that. There was a phone line, but, the phone, we didn't even have, we just had our cell phones. And it's parked there. Windows are blacked out. It's sitting there. I didn't go out. I was kind of like, oh boy, what do we do now? And another thing, 2 days, couple days prior to all that, Toby's driving a truck, and he's over in Bend, Oregon, hauling cabinets from Eugene, Oregon. And almost the same exact time, both our cell phones start clicking and go out. They just completely quit, both our cell phones. So, and I lost a lot of good stuff on that cell phone that I had recorded and all that. So I take, I take mine to Verizon and get a new one. And the gal in there calls the manager and she goes, because usually they can get your stuff from one phone and transfer it. And the manager goes, did you swipe your phone or what'd you call it? Swipe your phone or something, how they clean it? And I go, nah, I don't know. I'm tech zero, I don't know how to do any of that stuff. And she's the guy, well, this phone has been swiped or whatever she called it. And I was like, what do you mean? She goes, well, someone has taken it and put it on a device where they can just completely clean it. So it had nothing. I still have the phone. It had nothing on it. So I lost all my stuff. And anyways, that happened a few days before those footprints. So, and Toby's phone, his just completely conked out too. I don't think he had anything on his. Almost at the same time. Anyways, the white van, brand new Ford van, white. I didn't see any. You couldn't see in it. It was kind of parked in front of the shop, but out by the logging. There was a logging road that was out front about, I don't know, a few 100 feet, and it was kind of parked out at the edge of that, but right at the shop. And we knew both our neighbors that lived a little ways from us, and it was nobody. They knew. No, I asked them. No, we don't know anybody in that. So that was really strange. And then it wasn't a week later. We kept having strange things happen around there like that. Um, I came out one day and our mailbox was about a mile down to the main road from where we lived up in the sticks here. So I took my truck, I went down there and got the mail, came back. I went out. I was probably in the house 15, 20 minutes, and I was going to go get a haircut. So I went back out to my truck, and here's 4 rocks sitting on the cab of my pickup. Rocks, just not real big ones. And I'm like, as soon as I walked off the deck, I saw them because I'm up higher than the truck. I'm like, what the heck? and none of my neighbors are going to come over there and stack four rocks on the top of my truck. So I'm like, what in the world? So I just took pictures. I think took them down, went out, came back, and about maybe a week or two later, after that white van was out there, I wake up in the morning. My wife goes to work real early, and so we wake up and we see some brake lights of a car going by real slow, like with a brake on, right in front of the house. And nobody comes out there. The neighbors are going this way if they left out. They don't go by our house. And we're like, who in the heck is that? So it just kept going. So we never thought nothing of it. She goes to work. About 3 hours later, I look out and here's this black, brand new Suburban, no plates, parked even more closer into our shop. Like there was gravel going out and it was parked right at the edge of that gravel, just parked there. And I'm thinking, I don't know anybody that's got a brand new Suburban. They're all blacked out. And it was parked with a windshield looking at me. I couldn't see through it. They had the windshield even blacked out. And I got my binoculars, I'm looking. I got good binoculars because I hunt Leopold, and I could not see through that dang window. No license plate on it. No, Oregon has the two license plates, not like out here, the front and the rear. And it didn't even have the thing on it where you buy the vehicle. And so I'm looking at that thing. I'm like, what the heck, And it sits there and sits there, and pretty soon I'm watching it. Probably it sat there for an hour. So I'm kind of, up and down watching it, and it just drives off real slowly to the left. I looked at the back, no license plate on the back. And it had only thing I saw in it was some little green square on the back corner of the back right window. I don't know what that meant. I couldn't tell if it was an insignia of anything, but it was a little green square.
I think once you're on their radar with this stuff, man, I don't know if you've heard the stories about the two guys that show up in black suits to people. It's such a strange thing, they definitely know about these things and what their involvement is. I don't know, but I think they're heavily, heavily involved, and they probably were watching you, man, because all the strange stuff you had going on. But
I just think they were probably tapping into our phones and heard all the stuff we were talking about, and when we got those knee impressions, they had to check those out and see what they were all about. So that's why they came into the shop, those footprints. Weirdest thing. I never even thought of this. Somebody told me it not long ago is they probably saw that they made those muddy prints and took their shoes off and walked back out. I was wondering how on earth did they walk in with those muddy shoes and not walk back out? They couldn't have walked backwards over their footprints perfectly. And I never even thought about it until they told me that. Yeah, they saw their muddy prints and took their shoes off and walked back out in their socks or whatever.
I'm sure that's what happened, man. Like where you talk about this stuff and you kind of get sucked in, you get way more questions than you do answers. And I think the government definitely is highly involved, and I think they know, or maybe even involved with Dogman, Bigfoot, things like that. What that is, man, I don't know. And I'd have been freaking out, man, if I'd have had that happen to me at my property, especially living way out like that. But I know that you eventually left the property. I know you had some other stuff happen. You eventually left the property, but tell us what happened when you came back this year. I know you've had several different stuff that happened, but I know you came back to the property and you saw some other, you had some more encounters while you were out there, but would love to hear about that.
Yeah, we only lived in that house about 2.5 years. It was prior to COVID, and my wife's a counselor, mental health therapist. So when COVID hit, she had to work from home for about a year. So we had no internet out there. So basically, we had to sell a place and had to move into town where she could have good internet access to do her work, for her clients or consumers, they call them now. But anyway, So we lived there a year, at almost two, a little over two maybe. But I didn't. After we moved and sold the place, um, I kept habituating the area right above it, where all the Bigfoots were coming from, and all a lot of the weirdness. The woods behind there, which I call the Alm Moon Wilderness now. But and that's actually where I had the sighting that I got the pictures of, and that's where those sounds were coming from that I recorded of the Bigfoot yelling and all the different stuff. But so for the next 5 years, I was kind of habituating that area up above the house. I mean, the stuff that I got, I didn't just get it overnight. I was there a little over 7 years to get all that evidence that I got. So I would go up there, put out peanut butter on a tree. I would do all those little things I was telling you about with a mirror, and go to the tractor supply or a farm supply and get the real big rat traps, sticky traps, nail them up on a tree 8 feet, put peanut butter behind them, and then the Bigfoot would touch them, and you'd get the hair. That's what I was doing it for. Get hair samples. But then I had tons of hair samples. So, and then footprints. I found a couple trackways up there in the area that we cast a bunch of prints. You know, different sizes. 17 and a half inch were pretty much the biggest prints up there, and that I saw. And then there was smaller ones, and a friend of mine, Mark. Well, Mark Parker. You interviewed him. He uh, he cast some small ones on down the hill. And anyways, me and my grandson went up to that area one day that I had to habituated for 3 or 4 years at that time. And he's a young kid, so I would always set out my game camera on a tree across from where that peanut butter was that I would put out with apples and eggs and cookies and just different, things, and rub peanut butter on the tree with my latex gloves and then tie them off to a limb. And I would put my game camera on a tree by there, and then I would get that moss, that grows everywhere up there, and kind of disguise it. But anyways, that certain day, my grandson was with me, and he was going to go down there and get the card out of the game camera. And I was working my way down in there. It was kind of muddy, and it's a pretty straight downhill, for about 400 or 500 feet down in there. So I was going slow. I think I had a bucket of peanut butter and stuff because I was going to rebait it up for the next week. And I'm leaning up against a tree. He comes around to the left, goes down in there, and I see this dark figure start coming up out of there to the right. So I'm leaning up against a tree with my camera and with my phone, because every time I'd get there, I'd get my phone out. That's why I wonder, a lot of these people that have sightings and all that, hey, we got these great phones. As soon as I got there, I would always have my phone ready because, if I heard something or weird, I mean, there was 99% of the time, you don't see anything or anything. But this certain time, my grandson went down in there. He's this young 19-year-old kid, just he can run down the hill. He goes down there to get the card out. Here comes this black thing to the right, avoiding him. I just start snapping pictures of it, and it's kind of a little gully there, a little draw that it's walking up to, and it was a Bigfoot. I saw it. And it was just walking with its head down, walking pretty fast to get away from him, not making any sound. It was super quiet. It was walking. It was probably a couple 100 feet from me, kind of going away from me. When I took those pictures, that was probably about 300 feet away. But and you're seeing this thing and you're excited and you're snapping all these pictures, so you're not getting really good stuff. But I just saw it walking and had its head leaning forward. Didn't look like it had much of a neck because it didn't really stand up. It was walking uphill, leaning down forward, kind of walking to the left at a little bit of a 45 angle into that draw. So I got a couple pictures of it, and I saw it really good. And that was a weird one. And then I told my grandson, I go, "Hey, we better get out of here. We don't know what's going to happen." So I just took the bucket and we left because I didn't want anything to happen to him. Um, I never really had a gun. I never took a gun down in there. Occasionally, I would have my AR in the truck. I have an AR-10 that's ready to rock, 30-round clip. If they start throwing rocks at me and it hits a fan, I'm gonna, defend myself. But I wasn't going there. I have no desire to, shoot one or anything.
I think that's smart, man. I think if you were to get fortunate enough to take one out, man, there's always multiple of these creatures that are close by, in my opinion. And I think you take one out, man, you're gonna have a hard time taking the rest out. But kind of the big question with that area, and there's so much strangeness there. But man, what do you think that these things are doing on the property?
Man, after all that time there and seeing them and all this, I can't even say. I don't want. You got a few different camps of Bigfoot. You got the flesh and blood, you got the woos, and then you got the woohoos, and then you got the woo. And I've seen them all. I've seen people that were certifiably should be locked up. I think some of the stuff that they go off on, and then after you're around it for a while, you're like, hey, maybe they weren't crazy. But it like you said, it works on you psychologically. I'm just a regular person and not crazy, and it I don't have any PTSD from it or anything. Probably, I worked hard construction underground. I seen people hurt, die, different things. I almost died a few times. So it kind of hardens you, as a person, almost like a veteran, maybe, or somebody. That type of work is, you just got to go to work and toughen up, and you never every other word's the F word, and it's just like hardcore, like a Marine, because it's hard work. I mean, you're 90-pound jackhammer, going at it, big union company. It's fill up the back of the shovel and the front will take care of itself kind of work.
Yeah, it definitely is. It does, man. You are hardened with that kind of stuff, and when you have these kind of encounters, it does change you psychologically. It changes your perspective on the world, and if I said it once, I've said it a million times, man. I walk away with way more questions than I do answers, and who knows what they're doing there.
We saw the UFOs there too. Everybody saw them. The neighbor, he called it the chandelier, the thing when it would come out above the power lines and drop these balls of light into the woods. Um, we saw the orbs. Everybody that went there saw orbs. There would be red ones and white ones.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of strangeness on that property, man. Like there's a lot to that you just I don't know what to do with all that. And like I said, I've talked to a lot of people and I've seen a lot of stuff. But man, some of the evidence you've sent is probably some of the best. And I don't think I could have lived there. I don't think I could have hung out there. And it's so strange that all that stuff is probably still going on. But I appreciate you coming on the show, Daryl, and just taking the time out to share this story with my audience. And just, man, I'm glad you're here to share it because I think, in my opinion, you're pretty fortunate. There's so much strangeness there that it'd be easy for you to be a missing 411, man, with all that weird stuff going on the property. But, I'm glad you're here to tell it.
It would have. I mean, I would go up there by myself all the time because, like I said, I'm not a wuss. I'm not afraid of anything. Uh, but I got scared out of there a couple times. Hearing the ground rumble down below you and sound like I heard a buffalo's coming up the hill, and so I'm just working my old butt back up to my truck. I get up there, and then as I got up, I could look down in there, nothing. So what in the world can make the ground rumble like that? Like there's a herd of cattle coming up the hill at you. It's just that area. I can't explain that area. And Bigfoot, what are they? I don't know. They're physical beings. I mean, I took a picture of one. I saw all the footprints, fingerprints. I got tons of hair. You know, I did all kinds of experiments. I'd do the peanut butter. I would take a trash bag. If you turn it inside and outside with your gloves on, it makes static. For anybody out there that wants to get some hair samples, do that with a trash bag. wrap it around the tree or wherever you saw the Bigfoot at. Take it, take scissors, sterile stuff, lay it out, take your strong flashlight. You'll get so many hairs because that static electricity from that bag will suck those hairs right off that tree or whatever, off your car. Anywhere there's a that you saw that thing touch, a footprint. When you see a footprint, they got hair around their feet or whatever. Do that with a trash bag first without damaging your print.
It's stuff like that that is so intriguing to me. And I think if you think about this thing in the right way, you can definitely collect a lot of evidence. So there are a lot of evidence out there. And, my opinion on Bigfoot changes all the time. I think that when they're flesh and blood, they're flesh and blood. And when they're not, they're not. I don't know what else to do with it. I look at things through a biblical lens, and I think that there's so many different opinions, and we're all taking educated guesses. But it's such a strange world, man. And some of the stuff I don't know what you do with, but it's really a lot of fun to talk about. And again, man, thanks for coming on the show. And if you see something in the future, man, please let me know and stay in touch, man. I really enjoy talking to you.
I'm going to be speaking also at the Kiamichi Bigfoot symposium or conference. It's going to be about the middle of May over in Tallahena, Oklahoma. Yeah, it's a pretty good one.
Guys, if you want to go check Daryl out, you want to meet him in person, go to the conference. It takes a lot of guts to come on here and share this kind of stuff, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode tonight. Definitely check out Alm Moon Labs. It's probably the strangest place I've ever heard of, and, like I said, I think he's really fortunate to be here to share these encounters, and it's such a strange world, but I'm very grateful to be able to sit here and listen to these stories and meet people like Daryl. And without those stories, this channel couldn't happen. And without people like you watching and supporting the channel. So thanks for hanging out with us tonight. I hope you enjoyed that one. That was a good one. I'm going to say it. Can't get off here without doing it. Stay prayed up, guys. We'll see you in the next episode.